What should you have in your food plot? Here is a clip of Skip talking about how he sets up his food plots and what he puts in them. He's had over 20 years of perfecting this food plot and still continues to optimize it. But this is a great starting point for anyone getting ready to put in their fall food plots. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Also talk about how he was preparing for a very dry summer. It was a drought when we were recording this. Thankfully, we've had some timely rains, but this is some great information to have in the back of your mind. Hope you guys enjoy this. Here we go.
Here's an example of a food plot where I'll have 3 or 4 types of plantings in one food plot. And if you looked at the amount of species, it'd probably be 20. But right here, we've got clover that's struggling because it hasn't rained for a month and a half, but very lush clover. And that's the first thing to green up in the spring. So these deer are just packed in here on this clover, getting lush growth. And right now it's struggling because it's middle of summer, which is very typical. And then right over here, I had rye, peas, oats, different stuff like that. I mowed it over, and I frost heated some clovers in there that probably petered out because of the drought, which is okay. And then I'll probably convert this into brassicas right here, and then out here where there's my grain, I'll probably take all the corn that's destroyed and maybe even take another ½ acre or an acre and turn that into brassicas later. So we'll have clover, brassicas, rye mix, and then corn. So 4 different things. And then within that rye mix, there's like 5 or 6 things that you can get the details on Iowa Whitetail. The Doubletree section, and it's called the Cereal Rye Mix. Doubletree made that up a long time ago, so check that one out. It's legit, it's awesome. So that's what I'll do, is take his blend and put that over there, and I can actually drill through some of that corn. I'll probably spray it with Glide or something like that, maybe 2,4-D, and then give it a week, and then plant that. But 4 things right here. Why I plant 4 different things is because at any given time, no matter the weather, they're gonna want something here. They're gonna eat this clover if it's warm. In the summer, they might eat the clover. Just whenever it's lush, they're gonna eat the clover. When they might not really want the grains if it's warm. And then the brassicas, there's certain periods in time, they'll hammer mine even in October. And then the rye mix, when I plant that rye mix, from the day I plant it into winter, even into the next spring, they're still eating it. So, and deer like a little bit of everything. So they'll come out here and they might start in the clover and they'll eat literally all 4 things. Or they might eat 2 and be like, yeah, I don't want that tonight or whatever. But it just gives them a lot of options. And it keeps the soil health really good too by rotating things around. And my fertilizer cost is very minimal because this is fixing nitrogen and I'll have something else fix nitrogen. It's really easy to maintain. So it's a little over the top, but it's not that hard to do. This plot's the best late muzzleloader. They'll be eating in the clover and the rye. During bow season, you know, any of them, it just depends on the night, depends on the deer. I can't read their minds. They just do weird things, but all of a sudden I'm like, they didn't touch such and such, and the next night it'll be reversed. I don't know, I can't explain it all other than, you know, I can't read their minds other than the fact that having all 4 is very effective. It's top-notch nutrition, and it works extremely well. It just works extremely well in all capacities. So I got to move that bulb line up there, and my access is bulletproof. So my farm is technically located, if you want to know, it's in the Sahara Desert. We're so dry this year. It's just a bad drought. But in a dry year, I have alfalfa, and I actually just clipped the top of this, which is not ideal, but it's fine. And it still is luscious growth. And when everything else is dried up because we don't get any rain, which I just prepare for it. I just know some years are gonna be like that. I have alfalfa throughout my farm, even if it's a ½ acre pocket. Get alfalfa done right. And there's a lot of details. Alfalfa's fussier on establishing it and keeping it healthy. Like clipping it's probably not ideal, but it's fine. And this field is just filled with deer every night because these root systems of the alfalfa go down, 10 feet, where clover might only go down 6 inches. So alfalfa is going to just tolerate a drought and be luscious growth for the deer. And you can see right here, it's nice green growth. I mean, because I clipped it, it looks a little brown, but this field is full of deer every night, and it's one advantage that some farms do not have this component out there.
So you think every farm should have alfalfa?
I think it should have a little bit of alfalfa. It's just a great thing to have during a drought year and a non-drought year. It's just a great food source. I mean, if I could only choose one, I'd have clover. But if I had the luxury of doing 2, I would do clover and alfalfa.
You put these seeders in too?
Yeah, they were out in this field. In this field right here, they told me you'll never grow anything out of this field other than cedar trees. I said, I'll prove you wrong. And I started, and the organic matter was about 2%. And it's at 4 now. And I grew corn out here one year, did great. I grew beans out here, and then I have put compost and manure out here and lime, and I can grow anything out here now. But I built the organic matter a lot.
How long does that take?
If you're very aggressive, if you know what you're doing and you utilize all components, I think you can raise it 0.5% every couple years. It just depends how aggressive you get with compost and cover crops, and if you do the right combination of cover crops. But that compost is putting a huge amount of organic matter on the soil. Same with cattle manure, and that's adding huge amounts of organic matter. Compost is by far the best. And then with the cover crops and doing no-till, so I'm not losing that stuff, I've really increased the organic matter several percent on some fields, 2 and 3%. And that's taken 12, 15 years, I guess, whatever it would be since I own this. But there was literally junk soils that are now extremely productive soils.
When you say compost, what exactly do you mean?
Okay, so not practical for a food plotter unless you can get a farming neighbor who is on this page, but it is a growing market. The government will pay companies to recycle food waste, so they'll go to like Walmart and Hy-Vee and all these places and get their food scraps, and they get subsidies to recycle them. Well, then they'll essentially give them to you, the compost, or they'll sell it to you really cheap. And so they'll put all this food waste in a pile and they'll let it decompose, and then they rotate it. It gets really hot. And they can only let it get to a certain level. They'll mix in certain things like wood chips or whatever to get it to certain levels, but it'll have very high levels of calcium. It'll have 30% organic matter, all your macros and micros. So you don't need to remember this. You don't need to think about this, but P and K and calcium and sulfur, it's got very high levels of all those things. And then all your micros like zinc and boron and you name it, manganese. It's got all that stuff, which are all needed by plants. And you put that out, so now you're getting almost a perfect balance of nutrients. It's just that black, rotted food matter, and it's been degraded. What compost is it turns into black, so it looks like soil. So people go, what is soil? Well, soil is broken down plants, that were degraded with fungus and bacteria, and it turns it into soil. And that's what we've lost a lot of, is our topsoil. Well, we're essentially adding topsoil back with a lot of nutrients with it, with a lot of fertilizer with it, and even the nitrogen content on it. It's extremely high. So, for me to buy all the things in that compost, which I can't buy them all. I can't go to the co-op and buy organic matter. But for me to do that, it would cost me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars at the co-op, where compost is maybe a third of the price. So economically, it's a smart move. And then you say, well, why wouldn't you do compost? Because it's a pain in the butt. Because you got to have a big spreader to do it. You got to have it hauled in with a truck, and that's what I do. I have a truck haul it in, put it in piles, load it into a big spreader, and spread it on my fields. It takes a lot of time, so it's a pain. Is it worth it? Absolutely. It's the best fertilizer known to man. I was just telling Jake about my food plots. So behind me, this is one of my food plots, and I have a variety of things there, but I think it's around 80 to 85 CSR. I pattern tiled that, and it's had manure put on it for about 10 years. It's pretty much drought proof, even though we haven't had rain. It'll be amazingly productive. So it's tiled, it's 85 CSR, very high production ground. The corn yield's always in the 200s, and very, very fertile, and that's my food plot. And it's a lot easier to work with high quality soils, if you can choose, than fighting your poor quality soils and trying to get a crop there and having failure. The organic matter out there is probably around 7%, so I can get away with a lot and raise a heck of a crop over there for the critters.
How many sheds do you find in there?
Depends on the year. If it's really cold, if it's a hard winter, maybe 20, 30, 40 sheds around here. And then if it's a light winter, then they just get scattered around. and you might find 5 out there. So it just depends on the winter, but 40 to 50 in that plot in a really tough winter would be rough guess. It's a good spot.